Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Peter.
Episode 218, recorded for July 5th, 2023. The Cloud Pod is a sucker and shifts left. Good evening, Ryan and Matthew. How are you guys doing?
Hello, I'm good.
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
Do you have all of your appendages, or did you guys blow any off with fireworks? Or did you keep it sane for 4th of July?
See, I have a little one. I was hoping for peace and quiet. So didn't wake the baby.
I mean, you live in New Jersey, so I can only imagine the spectacle that is fireworks in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I'm boring, so I was installing a floor.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Here, I mean, we don't really get to shoot off fireworks here in this part of California because it's fire country, and so we don't try to risk it if we can help it. So we go where the fireworks are, like Disneyland and places like that instead. So that's our solution to this problem. So yeah, we don't blow anything up either, but we could enjoy other people blowing things up safely. So, well, I am back from my trip, and I'll give you guys an update on that first. But I think first of all, we talk about IBM and their acquisition spree. This time buying Apptio, or for those of you who are familiar with Cloudability, Apptio owns Cloudability, which they bought a few years ago. This is for $4.6 billion in cash, 5 years after Vista Equity bought Apptio for $1.94 billion. Apptio was created in 2007 and notable as the first company Andreeson Horowitz invested in. Apptio offers cloud-based technology and hybrid business management software for managing businesses in the IT field. Technically, I think they invented the ITBM field, which are IT business management. There's a quote here from IBM Chief Executive Arvind Krishna. Technology is a changing business at a rate and pace we've never seen before. To capitalize on these changes, it's essential to optimize investments to drive better business value, and Apptio does just that. Apptio's offerings, combined with IBM's IT automation software and Watson X AI platform, gives clients the most comprehensive approach to optimize and manage all their technology investments. So yeah, that's interesting, I guess.
I'm very surprised by it. I mean, way to go, Vista. That's a great return on that investment. So that's good for them. The last time I played with Apptio was very early in my cloud experience, and Apptio was struggling to understand how to sort of port their methodologies into cloud. Like, it worked really well in the data center and for IT shops for tracking assets and managing visibility into cost and financials there, but it really struggled with stuff like, dynamically changing instance groups and that sort of thing. And so it made sense when they bought Cloudability. So I haven't played with it since. So I'm sure that they've improved the product and they're pretty good in both spaces now. The IBM angle is weird, but I've never understood IBM's business strategy. So nothing new there.
Yeah, I mean, with Red Hat and what was it, Turbonomics, they also bought, it's just, they're definitely going for that business play, and the larger enterprises, which makes sense for IBM, but where this is all fitting, because I feel like that's not as, unique of a market, just feels kind of weird, but it's IBM. They've been around forever. I hope they have an idea what they're doing.
So based on the FinOps X vendor booth, where I saw Turbonomic owned by IBM, NordCloud FinOps owned by IBM, and now Apptio owned by IBM. I'm not sure IBM understands what they're doing either. It's a great idea that you think that, but I don't really know anything. I have some third degrees of separation from Apptio because their co-founder and CEO of it is good friends with one of my mentors. And he's been the CEO pretty much since the company founded, and then went public, and then got bought by private equity, and now got bought by IBM. So maybe he'll go retire now because he's had to have made an absolute fortune.
That has to be
on
a
this
lot
company,
of cash, yeah,
with that many exits and opportunities to get a lot of cash. So good luck to Sonny, who's the CEO over there. He probably doesn't remember me, but I know him. We met a while back. But so this is a good segue into FinOps X in general, because that's where I spent last week, hanging out with all of my FinOps peoples. I got to meet a couple listeners, which was great. It was nice to see. And a friend of the show, Rob Martin, and I finally met in person. Awesome. He's a constant Slack lurker for us and has been a contributor to the show before. So it was great to hang out with him, and we had a couple beers and liquor. It was very nice. So good to go. But the FinOps X conference, if you're part of the FinOps Foundation, I will have to say is a fantastic event. The energy was super positive. There's a lot of people super excited about FinOps. It's interesting because I didn't realize how many people had come out of accounting or finance to come into FinOps. And so it's kind of an interesting technology meets financial accountant worldview. So you get kind of both perspectives in the sessions as well as in the hallway conversations I was having. You'd ask like, well, what was your background? And I was in finance for years, and then I got really interested in this cloud thing, and it's a fun challenge. And so that was interesting. The vendor side of FinOps is interesting. I've realized that we are fully now at the end of Gen 1 FinOps tools, which is everyone has a dashboarding tool, everyone has a recommendation engine tool, and an anomaly detection portion. It's funny because on day 2 of the keynote, that they basically had all of the sponsors give a 2-minute pitch on their products. And I literally saw the same dashboard just with different UIs, probably for every vendor. Yeah. I definitely think it's interesting. I did have an opportunity to talk to some startups, they're on the floor and they're thinking about kind of the next generation of what that looks like. And you're really talking about bringing AI and LLM technology into FinOps and how do you get, beyond the basics of it. So I think I think we're at this kind of cusp of the end of the Gen 1 era. That's all become commodity, which makes sense why Apptio is selling to something like IBM because the growth market for Cloudability is probably limited now. And then I think you'll kind of see the verge of, how do these people take advantage of like Watson? If Watson X at IBM can help Apptio jump to the next level, if these other companies can take advantage of LLM models, especially, again, knowing the audience is very heavily accounting and finance people, they're not coders. So if they can go use natural language to go ask, hey, what would happen if I changed all of my instance types from N1 to N2 on Google, or if I changed from GP2 to GP3, what would that save me? And you can ask that question to your FinOps tool. I can see that being a really compelling use case and really something that will be kind of next generational. So I suspect that we're in for a bunch of FinOps and capabilities coming out of these vendors as they try to figure out what their V2 is, and potentially new startups that are going to come in and be disruptive to the Gen 1 players, because I think it's very commodity, which was my big takeaway from the conference in general. So it was good. It was a nice time. I definitely recommend going if you're in the FinOps space. I think it was a great event. Really well, high production volume. I mean, it felt like reInvent in some ways and how classy it was. Nice. Audio was maybe a little weak in some of the breakout rooms, but that's a minor quibble. Just because they use some cheap speakers. The vendor.
That's probably the venue too, right?
Exactly. And it was at the Marriott Marquis in San Diego, which is a beautiful hotel. Take your family to as well, so your family can go to the beach and you can go to the FinOps conference. So they're going to be there again next year, so you'll have that opportunity.
Nice. Yeah, I'm waiting for the first one of these players to really get the data enrichment, like AI generated data enrichment of your resources. Like the first person who cracks that in a reliable, like useful fashion, I think it's going to change the way we do business, because I think there's a lot of business decisions we make on incomplete data. And I think that once that data is more complete and you can turn something loose to do it at a very large scale, I think it's going to change a lot about what we think our businesses, how they run, how healthy they are, what things cost. And it's going to make really simple decisions and technology choices and architecture choices be very visible, right, in terms of actions. And it's sort of the holy grail. And, we're still largely in cloud trying to figure out our, working on our tagging strategy and enforcement and trying to get that data enriched from the generation. But the minute we can outsource that, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and really that Gen 2 stuff at this point, I've looked at many of the players and, they're all kind of, like you said, the same. And even, the Azure console or AWS console is getting there to catch up with a lot of those. Definitely not saying they're as good as them, but has 50 to 60%, depending on the console, as good. So the person, like you said, that can crack that Gen 2 space, is definitely something that I'm looking at for my day job and, ready to recommend once they can really prove the value. Because like you said, just being able to say, hey, what if I move from A to B or B to C, and really understand what the differences are and what the benefit's going to be, versus I've sat down many times with many different spreadsheets doing, okay, we got this many instances and this many virtual machines. And if we switch them to these and do these savings plans and this may, like, what's the outcome?
Yeah.
So what's the story behind FinOps X? Because, we were talking about it as we were discussing show titles. What does the Fox say for in FinOps X, which I love. And so, What's
Yeah, so there was a merchandise booth where you could turn your little ticket in and get a T-shirt or a hat, and one of the things you get was a fox. And so I went through the whole conference going like, I don't understand what this fox is about. Like, does the FinOps Foundation have a mascot that's a fox or whatever? And then finally, Rob Martin was able to fill me in like, oh no, it's FinOps X, Fin with the F, Ops as an O, and then X, so that became Fox, and that's where that came from, which is a stretch. I appreciate the effort, but they should have FinOps X as a Fox. It's a good idea.
I mean, if you already have faux, you got to figure out how to make.
Yeah, that. There's not a lot of other options you got there. Right? So FOB doesn't really work out as well.
Yeah.
So, but Fox is great. So that was one of our rejected show titles, which you can always see on our show notes. What does the fox say? But so that was a little interesting thing I learned while I was there. But it's so attendance wise, it was 1,100 people, I think, roughly. Plus about 100, I think, FinOps Foundation employees who are working the event. They said last year it was in Austin. They had about 400 people. So they've grown quite a bit. They'll probably grow a little bit more in San Diego next year. But, this is going to be a hot ticket, I think, especially after this year. A lot of good positive momentum. The foundation Slack channel has been, people shared photos and how much great it was. So I suspect if you're interested in going, it did sell out a week before the conference occurred. Do buy your tickets early next year, and we'll of course remind you that it's coming up when they announce the dates next year as well. Friends of the conference, and we have many friends there who work there, JR and Rob, etc. So definitely going to keep an eye on what they're doing over there, of course, and continue to share more detail. There was some interesting stuff around personas as a big factor, and FinOps X, what they're doing. They did announce the focus. They announced it last year, but Focus is really getting a lot of traction. Google and Azure said they're going to adopt the Focus format, which is their standardized billing data. Amazon is not participating yet. Hopefully they will in the future. The one thing I thought was interesting was how absent AWS was from this conference, considering how big they are, talking about financial FinOps practices and how important they are. To not be there at the biggest thing around it sort of is a slap in the face of the foundation, I think, in some ways. So hopefully they fix that. And they get their act together, because I think they should be supporting this movement. I think it's a powerful thing. And if Amazon people are listening, do better. You should be part of this.
I'm a little disappointed with Amazon, quite honestly, just because they were really big about FinOps when it was sort of only AWS. But the minute it became more of a community and integration, AWS went real quiet.
Yeah.
Right. And they haven't made any changes to adopt standardized platforms or anything like that. They're notoriously resistant to changing things like their cost and usage report. So it is sort of like, I get it. So they have some work to do.
No, it's impacting their growth numbers now and their bottom and top line. So why would they want people to do that?
Yeah, true. Fair point.
Showing people what they spend is probably not a good life choice, and where they spend it.
I don't know. That's a big selling point of the cloud to me. Like, it's a huge advantage over running a workload at a data center where it's so hard to calculate the cost of things. Like, I love having a bill. Be like, nope, cost this much. Exactly this.
Yeah. Well, and I think it drives good behaviors when you have the ability to show what these things cost, because it's sort of a hidden cost in your data center that people don't really realize. So, all right. Well, let's move on to AWS here. So they have added some new features to the application migration service. One of the features I've never used. I've never used this service or ever tried to. I've used DMS with moderate success. But the three new features to the application migration service is a global view, which allows you to manage large-scale migrations across multiple accounts. This feature provides you both the visibility and the ability to perform specific actions on source servers, apps, and waves in different AWS accounts. Some of those actions could be launching and testing or a cutover of instances across those accounts, as well as monitoring the execution and migration across those accounts themselves. There's a new import and export from local disks, so you can use AMS to import your source environment inventory list that serves from a CSV file on your local disk. You can also export your source server inventory list to the same CSV file and download it to your local disk, or you can continue to leverage those pesky S3 buckets for 2 steps. Then they also give you some additional post-launch actions, which adds 4 predefined post-launch actions to AMS, including configure time sync, validate your disk space, verify HTTPS response, and enable Amazon Inspector.
I think the reason why none of us have ever used this tool is because we don't actually like supporting cloud adoption in this way. Like, this is very, it's a lift and shift methodology, and this just isn't a problem I have with lift and shift methodology, right? Like, there's a lot of tools available, and generally when I'm looking at cloud adoption, even in a lift and shift scenario, I'm trying to encourage like better CI and CD and deployment automation and those types of things. And I feel like this is sort of a cheat, around those things where you don't have that. And so I get it. But I do worry about, what happens day 3 after you use this tool. But it's not fair since I've never used it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's great to lift and shift, as I can imagine, but I don't even just leveraging the basics of the cloud, thinking like, hey, just put it in an auto healing group so you have, some backup if it goes down or anything along those lines. That's what I look for, and telling people to just move, I feel like just sets them up for failure in the future, because as soon as, like you said, an AZ goes down or the underlying EBS volume, they're going to lose everything. And or either that, or you got to have backups. And at that point, you're not actually leveraging the cloud. And honestly, you're probably better off in a data center at that point, because you're going to be paying 30 to 50% more to run it in the cloud and get none of the benefits.
Yeah.
Or very few of the benefits.
Yeah, I think it's, it's one of those things like you turn all the knobs on, right, in the cloud, and it just costs so much money. You turn all the knobs off and then you have an issue, right? It's, if you're not applying critical thought and design and doing things very intentionally, there's just so many gotchas. But it is sort of this thing, because I like from an Amazon perspective, like I get why they have this tool, and it's a great option, I think, for people who are really new to cloud and really like have no idea how to, especially if they're a huge monolithic, how this app, how it would possibly run in the cloud. But it sort of like goes against, as someone who's been in a cloud center of excellence for long enough. I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare for someone. I feel bad.
Yeah, I mean, it can be good, I guess, for like, hey, we got 80% of our environment. We have this one legacy system that we just need to move, and that's, I guess, what this is good for. We got these, we got 85 or 90% of our data center moved. We got to get these last 5 to 10% out. Cool, let's just use this. But also at that point, you're probably in VMware. So probably it's just the VMware import probably would work equally as well too. So I understand where they're going with this, but this is not something I push and I talk about.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think we're all proponents of doing it right versus doing it fast and expensive. So yeah, that's one of those challenges. All right, well, let's move on. So if you are, maybe you've no cloud, but you're trying to learn AI this time around, if you're interested in learning more about, LLMs or large language models, images and music LLMs, there's a new course from the deeplearning.ai and AWS teach you how to use LLMs to create your own AI generated content. This new course will cover topics such as how LLMs work, how to train one, how to use an LLM to create content, and how to evaluate the quality of AI generated content. Or if you're using Google Workspaces, you just hit a button in your Google Docs and it makes content for you. It's kind of beautiful. But overall, this is a nice move in the right direction. They do teach you how to use their new LLM AI API. If you want to use Amazon's version of it, although I haven't heard anybody talking about Amazon's version of LLM AIs, so I don't know how good it is. But general knowledge is always good too.
It's I think Amazon's not as at the forefront of press, right? With Bard and ChatGPT, sort of taking all the win there. But I love this course. Like it's one of those things. Like I'm in my head, I want to take this course. The reality is that I have no time. But this is the type of course that would help step to step in a career, right? As technology moves on, as the ecosystem is changing, if you don't keep up, like if we don't learn AI, like we are going to sort of not understand what goes on, right? In a couple of years, it's just going to be the nature of the business. It's going to be everywhere and ubiquitous and have influence everywhere. And so like, I love these courses for getting into some of these things at the ground level. And especially when it's new, it'll be completely different in 6 months, but hopefully once you've got a base knowledge, you can go along on that journey rather than just be surprised. So I like it.
Yeah, it's much easier to stay up to date than, say, okay, we're going to start learning the cloud today, 15 years into the cloud becoming a thing where all of us had been in it for 10 years, or longer. And so like seeing each piece grow on top of each other makes understanding, I don't need to understand all the details of the latest and greatest Amazon service because I know how all the underlying principles work. And it's like, oh, okay, they just solved this use case and mix these three pieces. And it's much easier to understand. So like you said, if I was retired and had lots of money and time, I would totally go do this and have some fun on the side. But in reality, I just don't have the time right now in life.
Yep. I mean, it's sort of what happened to big data in general was that I didn't have the time to go learn all the cool big data things in Hadoop really well. And as much as I'd like to learn it really, really well, I still am at a very conversant level only, just because I haven't, I've witnessed it, I've seen it work. I just haven't had to build it myself with code, so I don't know how to, some inner workings work. But it's a problem with getting old and getting into leadership and management, I guess.
It's true, so true. I'm just glad because there was such a glut in cloud expertise, and it was hard to hire for so long, and so I feel like we are bound to repeat that mistake if we don't invest in the training early. And so it's good to see things like that where we won't know it because we're old dinosaurs. We're stubborn and tired, but at least there'll be a community that can nurse us along and answer questions for us when we need it.
You say I still feel like there is a deficiency in people that understand the cloud.
I mean, it's definitely better than it was 5 years ago, 8 years ago. Like, before it was like you rarely see someone say cloud on their resume. Now at least they say cloud on the resume. Now, do they know the cloud after that? That's a different problem. But at least they think they do. So at least we can have a conversation versus, well, I've never done the cloud. I don't know why you would. Some of those conversations we used to have all the time. So. AWS AppFabric improves application observability for SaaS applications. And when they say application observability, they really mean security observability in this particular case in this article. But, we don't mock the headline too much. As you know, many companies turn to SaaS applications for their enterprise apps to help all their employees and not have to manage pesky software. As SaaS app usage has expanded, there's an increasing need for solutions that can identify and address potential security threats to maintain uninterrupted business operations. Integration of SaaS apps with existing security tools requires many teams to build, manage, and maintain P2P integrations or point-to-point. And in response to this, AWS is launching AWS AppFabric, a fully managed service that aggregates and normalizes security data across SaaS applications to improve observability and help reduce operational effort and cost with no integration work necessary. When the SaaS apps are authorized and connected, AppFabric will ingest the data and normalize disparate security data such as user activity logs. And this is accomplished using Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework, an industry standard schema, and open source project co-founded by AWS. So I don't know how actually industry standard it is, but it's open source. The data is then enriched with user identifiers such as corporate email address. This reduces your security incident response time because you gain full visibility to user information for each incident. And you can ingest normalized and enriched data to your preferred security tool, which allows you to set common policies, standardized security alerts, and easily manage user access across multiple apps. This is available to you in North Virginia, Ireland, Tokyo, and eventual AWS regions in the future. A couple of things here. The security tools it can integrate with is logs.io, Netscope, NetWitness, Rapid7, and Splunk. And the SaaS apps that it supports is Asana, Jira, Dropbox, Google Workspaces, Microsoft 365, Microsoft 365 Audit Logs, Miro, Okta, Slack, Smartsheet, WebEx, Zendesk, and Zoom. And I'm sure many more SaaS companies are now looking at this as well, which is great. They did mention in the article that they are going to be adding some generative AI capabilities to this product in the future, which will allow you to automatically perform tasks across applications in that future release, which I guess would be nice when it comes, but not here yet. So now Amazon's in the vaporware AI stage where they announce things that will eventually come and maybe never will.
Yeah.
I feel like everything now is like, in our next version, we'll have ChatGPT integration or large language model. Like everything you see is just like, that's the next thing. So,
yep. Well, I mean, it's like, everyone was into NFTs and crypto stuff and Web 3.0, and then that all failed. And then it was Meta and Meta Universe and all that. And now we're into the ChatGPT will save the world and the economy world. And so everyone's got to have features in that space.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reading the blog post is just like a slew of Amazon services, of like, oh, it integrates with this and encrypted with KMS. And like, it's amazing how they really stitch all the services together to, on the back end to really just create the solution for you.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon's been awesome at that for years, right? They've built the foundational apps out so that they can just leverage them to provide the value. Like, because when I look at this and I go through, I'm like, this is a problem, and this is a real problem that I've had to solve. And it's there's getting these. It's all doable by hand, right, or by writing glue code to put things in the right place and do all the things. But having it sort of more of a turnkey solution for getting at this phase of its launch, just basically security logs all in one place, but it normalizes the logs from all the different applications, and it does all that for you, where it will make a security analyst's life a lot easier, right? Because these things are got consistent user IDs across using the emails, and do they have Okta access, and can that get to a Google workspace? And that's just a lot easier mission for a lot of these teams who have to maybe they can use it for attestation of their whatever their compliance requirements are, and that kind of thing. So it's I get it. I'm curious in cost, right? Because this is one of those things that can have a huge balloon cost, right? So, and you're not going to make any money by turning it on, right? Like you're going to have the ability to do forensic investigation. So it's like, careful.
So I was curious if any of you guys would kind of call out the fact that they've already had this available to you for a while. It's basically, this is a subset of features that exist in EventBridge. You just have to, highly targeted at security people who don't want to learn how to code. It's sort of my feeling about it. It's like, oh, so you took EventBridge and then you said, well, for the certain type of data set that security people care about, we're going to create this AppFabric thing, which is a terrible name, by the way, for this feature. That's how we're going to connect this thing. But, so now we've basically an opinionated version of what you already could have done with EventBridge, but now it's more limited because it only do security things, where EventBridge could do anything. And so, you get a product that you now pay $3 per user per month, and $3 for up to 30 apps for $3, and then an additional 5 cents for every additional app over the 30. And then you get this limited access and value to it. So,
I mean, it's only if the applications natively expose authentication options via eventing, right? Which is
you have to integrate. So
you'd have to if you were using EventBridge, in a lot of cases you'd have to write your own Lambda to go do a thing. But
potentially you could, but I mean, these companies are also partnering with them on EventBridge. So if these are your SaaS apps today, they're already there. You could have done this already. You just security people like the easy button sometimes.
But that's what they've done with the data lakes too. Yeah. There's the security data lake. There's the original data lake. I think there's a HIPAA data lake. I'm sure there's at least 3 other news announcements that I missed of.
Yeah. So this is where we get into verticalization that just drives me crazy, because now we're verticalizing for teams and personas inside of the organization versus verticalizing for industries. And this just sort of annoys me because it's already there. You could have done this. You just didn't want to do the work.
Maybe. I wonder, if you think about the Jira integration with EventBridge, I don't trust that it would actually track user logging into Jira. It's definitely a ticket create, ticket update, that sort of thing. I wonder if the devil's in the details if you're trying to really string these things together.
Maybe
you'd always hit an edge case, but then again, you're probably going to have that scenario anyway with AppFabric as well, right? Because it's going to be except for that one thing that we don't have integration.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
All right. Well, deploying state machines incrementally with versions and aliases now in step functions. Step functions now supports versions and aliases, which allow you to deploy state machines incrementally and manage multiple versions of your state machine With versions, you can create a new version of your state machine without overwriting the existing one. And with aliases, you can create an alias for a specific version of your state machine, or as we like to call it, latest. This allows you to test changes to your state machine without affecting production traffic. And you can also use aliases to point to different versions of your state machine for different environments, such as development, staging, and production.
So my fellow podcast hosts were like, we can get rid of this one. This isn't it. And I'm like, no. This is super awesome, guys. And I realized how much of a nerd I am.
I thought this already existed. I just thought this already existed because Lambda's under the hood, which is kind of what I've always used step functions with, already have that. So when we talked about it, I was just surprised that it didn't exist. No, this is one of those, I made the assumption.
You always basically have to destroy and replace, right? Like for the state machine. So if you're adding a new, step function, or if you're adding a new, logic or that kind of thing, it's always been a pain. So it's step functions have been great for like launching a new workflow and through that. But it's that second iteration that's always sort of like, right. And sometimes depending on your state machine, it's the integration with all the different places, and it can be kind of complicated to have two of these things, reading from the same S3 event or that kind of thing. It's been cumbersome, and it's required engineering to sort of set up and maintain. And so this is fantastic because it allows very quickly to, use a version and then fail back if it's, it starts doing crazy things.
We also had Canary deployments, which I actually found really cool for this type of thing.
If Canary for step functions? That I don't know.
Yeah, it's in here. You clearly didn't read the whole article,
I read the headline. Moved on. I got so excited. I did not see Canary. That is fantastic. I don't even know how that would work, but it is one of those things that's, I think step functions to me is just such an awesome way to stitch Lambda functions primarily together and have these workflows end to end. And, I think Justin and I, share a joke that everything is basically a forms and a workflow engine, like every application. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I love kind of working on the bare bones scaffolding and step functions. This just makes it a little easier to run full time.
And step functions outside of workflows, or I guess it is a workflow still, but like I've done some pretty cool stuff with it where it's like, hey, go grab every file in S3, from a, unique ID that they give it, on a web page. Mm-hmm. It pauses, gets the ID back and just queries. But like it fans out exponentially. And because there's like, this is one of those nuances I didn't know at the time, but like there's two kinds of step functions. I think like normal and express or something. If you do express, it like can fan out and you can double fan out and get like 1,600 concurrent Lambdas all processing stuff really quickly. And like returning it and passing up, between the step functions it can get really powerful really fast. And this is stuff that you can like, that example was something that was linked into like a web page to like query data from S3 buckets before Athena existed, I think.
I don't know. I know you and I were looking at step functions for a workload forever ago, and because it didn't have that parallel fan out, we decided not to use it. But and so the minute that was announced as a feature, like I used it for the next project immediately because it is just amazing. You hit account limits and run out of all kinds of different things, but because it is really easy to get it into a bad scenario with that. But I like this because it'll make maintaining and testing and developing step functions much easier. Great feature.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Well, Google apparently went on 4th of July holiday and released nothing other than if you're in Korea or you're in China, they now have support for you 24/7 in your native language of Mandarin, Chinese, or Korean. So I guess that's a win for that region who doesn't listen to our podcast. So moving on to Azure. Azure Virtual Network Encryption is now available to you. Customers can enable encryption traffic between virtual machines and virtual machine scale sets within the same virtual network and between regionally and globally peered virtual networks. This new feature enhances the existing encryption in transit capabilities of Azure. And this is those features that you have for your application isn't owned by you, and you need to encrypt it for a security compliance reason. Mm-hmm. And now you have an option. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. Or that one thing that's still running on like a 2012 server and you can't move it off because it's not supported on a more modern thing, but comes up in the security audit every single time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. It's problem solved.
Now, of course, those security audits all use operating system controls to figure out if the data is encrypted or not. So it won't know that the network is encrypted, but yeah, you can still mitigate that, I guess, other ways.
Curses.
You can write the exception properly.
And in true Microsoft fashion, it's in public preview, which means you have a little while till it's actually usable.
I mean, most of Azure is in public preview. So
yeah, pretty much.
I mean, GCP does the same thing. I used to complain about AWS until I started using Amazon has previews that last, like 6 months to a year for sure.
I mean, most of their initial releases, I feel like, are public previews that are, GA that then they actually make usable because they price it so high.
Yeah,
MVP.
it was an MVP.
Yeah.
They're seeing what the adoption is, and they'll make pivots. But they'll at least treat it like a production system initially, which is, very rarely does. I mean, more often, at least certainly, I guess. But Amazon typically, when they do a preview thing, there's for a reason because they actually don't know how the product's going to be used, and so they're really curious about feedback. And then there's everything else, which gets an MVP release. And you're like, it's missing things like TLS encryption or encryption at rest, and you're like, what happened to Warner's encrypt everything, guys? That's how you know it's an MVP product that they're launching. At least it's production-ish, which is nice.
Yeah, I feel like the preview is really, especially in GCP and Azure, is a way to sort of not be bound by SLA, right? So if there's
100%,
it's more contractual than it is about the product and the functionality of the app.
And even with that, if you talk to your reps, you can get them to sometimes agree to meet what their future contractual agreements are if they're far enough down the line that they're like, okay, we're releasing this in a month, or something like that. I've talked to a few people and they've done that with different small features that just, we're still in public preview.
So you're smart. I just use it and then it'll be like, it'll be fine. And then it's not. And you're like, crap.
I mean, now in the Google space, though, we had to worry about something being in preview for years and then going general available and then get sold to Squarespace. So
right,
we have that issue.
Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah, we talked about that last week while you were on your deathbed. How painful that was. They did release a really terrible FAQ that
good
tells you basically nothing. So so if you have questions about what they're doing, you can read the FAQ and be confused still.
No, I'm still mad. It's too soon.
Yeah, it's all too soon. All right, let's move on to our cloud journey. We have another interesting article this week for our cloud journey. This was written by Richard Sereder, who is a director of outbound strategy engagement at Google. And this is apparently the inaugural edition of the Modernization Imperative, also known as TMI, an acronym perfectly capturing their mission to enthusiastically overshare on all things tech. So this will be a blog post that we'll keep an eye on because I'm excited to see what else they say. But the first one, shifting left is for suckers, shift down instead. As for those of you who never heard shift down, which I had not either, I did not know we had a term for this now. Shifting down is the process of moving testing to earlier stages of the software development lifecycle. Shifting left is the process of integrating testing into the software development process. But both shifting down and shifting left can help to improve the quality of your software. And shifting down can help to identify and fix defects earlier, which can save time and money. And shifting left can help to improve communication and collaboration between developers and testers. Both shifting down and shifting left can help improve the overall quality of your software, allegedly. And really what they talk about when you get into the article is that shifting down means you're taking advantages of managed services, which is sort of ironic coming from Google because they don't really have a lot of managed services. They do list them on the article here, so GK Autopilot, Cloud Build, PubSub, Firestore, Spanner, Cloud Storage, and Cloud Logging, and Cloud Events. They did miss Cloud SQL, which I don't see on this list, but still, there you go. Empowerment through opinions, as they say. So this is an interesting idea. So there is an overall kind of thread that you'll see on Twitter occasionally or other subreddits. If you're still using that. That basically say, shift left is failing us as an industry and it's not getting the value we want. It's not increasing the productivity we want. And it's not really working. I don't agree with that. I think shift left is working if it's done right. I think there's a lot of companies just like DevOps who do it wrong. And so I'm intrigued mostly in this article about the idea of shift down, which is something I advocate all the time about. Managed services are something I love. I love managed services because it takes away toil from my teams and allows us to focus on things that matter. And so I do encourage this capability of shifting down to your managed service to help ease your burden. But shifting left, I still think has value. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think that both definitely have merits. I always say leverage the service because, like you said, I don't want to deal with the toil. I don't want to manage my own SQL servers. I don't want to deal with managing my own queues, or anything like that. But to me, shifting left is also don't have a, unless if you're integrating in, months to a project, but like if you're starting a new project, it's doing that sprint zero work, as I call it, that setting up your pipeline, setting up your Git repos, setting up the CI, the security tools and everything, doing all that at the beginning. That way you don't end up with code and they're like, cool, 6 months into this project, 3 weeks before we're going to go live, we're going to shift left now. That doesn't work. Like if you're going to do it, you got to do it from the beginning. And, it's that whole, hey, let's, if you're going to do it later, it's spend the time, make sure you allocate the time on the engineering team to actually, have the capacity to say, hey, we're going to spend 20% of our time for the next couple sprints to clean up a lot of these, high severities and all these other, things that come in there. Just saying, hey, we're going to shift left and we shove this thing in our pipeline and all it's going to do is piss people off.
I was laughing because as I was reading this, I'm like, wait, I thought that was shifting left, a lot, like it's a lot of these same ideas, I was shifting down. I've been sort of attributing as part of a larger thing. It just goes to, the industry, and we get these terms that we can all define as individuals separately. And then we sort of talk about them like they're unified, but they're not, right? I like a lot of the points in this article. It's great.
Yeah, he takes a particular onus to the full stack engineer concept, which I sort of enjoy because he had a great analogy for it. Where he said basically, he had a story about as a kid, his mom used to have him go out and start the car, which is really because she didn't want to warm it up. But he correlates that to as a 40-something-year-old adult frantically jabbing a self-checkout touchscreen, looking up the code for seedless grapes at the grocery store while enjoying the privilege of scanning and bagging its own produce. That all you're really doing is shifting the work to a different level, and that's sort of a version of shift left. And then he goes into a mini rant about full stack engineers, that there's basically only 9 that actually exist on planet Earth because virtually nobody writes a front end in React, sets up Kubernetes, configures a RabbitMQ instance, provisions space on the SAN, and lights up the top of the rack switch. And today's developers are asked to know web frameworks, architecture patterns, testing strategies, build systems, multiple types of databases, caches, automation tools, container orchestrators, L4 through L7 networking concepts, SaaS APIs, monitoring systems, numerous public clouds, and maybe a little bit of machine learning too. And he just flips through D&D.com and says it's pretty crazy what we're asking our junior and senior developers to do in general. So
that's the one point of the article I don't agree with, right? I don't think anyone is expecting a single person to do all the things, but I think that the important part to remember with a like full stack engineer and that is don't define yourself in the boundaries, right? There's going to be, just like any engineering team, if you're solely focused on front end, there's people that are going to understand frameworks and technologies at different levels of experience. You're going to have React experts and Rails experts and those things. So it's no different. But the difference is between full stack engineers is that you're not tossing anything over a wall, right? You may not know, but it's still on you to go figure it out, right? And so leverage your team, leverage your peers. I don't think we're expecting everyone to know these things and be experts in these things, but the idea that you have to know every technology front to end is ridiculous. No one knows any technology, it's not a realistic thing.
Yeah. I mean, and that's where I think we as practitioners, we abstract some of this away from the developers. So all they have to do is configure a Terraform module, but they have to know that they need a Terraform module first. So I think when we say, I need a full stack dev, it's someone that understands how this stuff all should work together and can, maybe doesn't have the detailed part of it, as you said, but at least has an understanding that, I need a message queue here. And I've used Rabbit in the past, or I understand the Rabbit API. And then how do I get access to that? Oh, well, there's a Terraform module. I can just plug it in. I can put some values in and I'm off to the races. And that's the beauty of, again, when you're shifting down, apparently in this article, going to managed services, I can get that RabbitMQ instance from Amazon. I can go to Elasticache and I can say, I want memory, I want Memcached or I want RabbitMQ or I want Redis. And I just push a button and now I have an API. But I still had to know I needed it. And I think that's where I think the full stack piece comes into play, is that I want them to be aware, not to the level of detail of like a practitioner, but at least awareness of at a cognizant level that like, these are things that you need to worry about. And you need to think about these things to do them. Just like I know web frameworks. Do I know every web framework inside and out? Hell no. but I at least understand what they are, and I basically understand the basic concepts of them, and so I can have a conversation with the developer on the web framework, and I can understand what he's talking about. So we can talk the same language. I think that's where full stack dev comes into it. And I think just like we over bias on words and things in technology, full stack dev, just like DevOps, just like some of these other things, gets overly loaded over time, and people assume it means this thing at a very crazy level, right? Like, again, you would never have a full stack engineer who would know all those things. I agree with his point on that. But I agree with Ryan on this also, that I would expect that developer to understand that those are things that would need to happen, and that he would have to engage with the right services teams or the right Terraform modules to do those things.
As practitioners, there is the responsibility within your business, right, to provide that ecosystem, provide that platform, and provide the support and the optimizations to do that, right? You need to have a team that is developing those Terraform modules, that are taking advantage of those managed services, and understanding, deep understanding of those interactions. So that can be a subject matter expert that can be centralized, and that multiple teams can leverage for that expertise. And that's it really is, like, it is an ideal that's hard to maintain, but I also feel like it's a lot about just the way we think about responsibilities and boundaries, and that's not my job, kind of mentalities. I think the full stack engineering has really broken that down in a way that I really, truly like.
But that's also where, whether, like you said, it's a COE, or you assign each team, each development team to have a front end, back end, QA person, DevOps person, they all work together to create a solution that does work, and that is tested and everything else. That's kind of, to me, a full stack engineer isn't a person, though I do want to know who these 9 people are that he references. But I would like to, is really getting the team together to work together and to figure out, like you said, okay, we have a front end, we need to send messages to the back end. Cool. The front end needs to put messages into here. The back end needs to read the messages and kind of work together. And that's where the team and the COE, that can either help at a larger scale, or if you're a small company where you associate these people together and they work together to create that proper solution.
Yeah, I agree. Any other points on this article you guys want to bring up?
I was just noticing at the end that they're, the whole article goes on, and then at the bottom is more resources on this thing, and it's just a direct link to their certification page, which is sort of funny to me. Like, that's not the same thing as resources. Yeah. But I think it's a lot of really good ideas. I think it is time that we sort of look at shift left and how shift left has been applied, and sort of derive the nuance and learn from our mistakes. But I also think that we'll do the same thing, just what we've always done it for all time. So we'll start overloading shift down and sort of abusing that the same way. But
as is the way.
But it's just because companies want to say, well, we do DevOps because it's a great way to hire people and to get people to do it. It's like, you're not doing DevOps. You're still tossing stuff over the fence from one team to the other, and you're just expecting your ops team to handle it.
You just called your ops team DevOps so that you can make them do development of things. Yeah, it's so many times.
Right. And, it's when you actually need to do what the thing is versus, it's saying what you do versus, actually just saying it. So, if you're going to shift down, yeah, it makes sense to leverage managed services. If you're going to shift left, do it at the beginning and spend the time to do it. Don't tack it on at, the 90 percentile. Or if you are going to do it, say, we're going to add this in. And this is where a security department really needs to not just be the old school no departments, but say, hey, we're looking at these tools. Come look at them with us. These are the 3 options that we're at. Hey, we're going to implement this. We need to make sure that from top down, from C-level down, we know we're implementing this tool. It's going to cost X thousands, hundred thousands, millions of dollars to implement, depending on how large your thing is. And we need to actually leverage it versus saying, cool, we have this great checkbox here saying that we've shifted left. We have static code analysis built in, but doesn't actually run ever because it's not integrated into a pipeline. And cool, it runs and it goes to a security email that no one checks. It's actually going to be integrating in all the entire way.
Yeah. And performance of those things should be, measured, right? Like, Yeah. How many times is that analysis run? How many things is it finding? What is the improvement over time? That is running. Like, that all needs to be treated as a whole inclusive thing that demonstrates its success. And
it's really the last part that you said. It's how are we improving over time? Are we actually taking the data from the tool and leveraging it? If it's a static code analysis, are we reducing the amount of SQL injections? Are we reducing the amount of dependencies that are outdated and getting that to a more stable point, and then blocking new dependencies going in? This might be something I've had to be fighting during my day job recently. Getting those metrics to kind of make sense and to go forward in that route, and whether it's static code analysis or anything else that you're implementing, it's doing it that way versus, just saying, cool, we have this.
Yeah. You'll never be able to take checkbox security and then just make a developer check the box, right? That's, and a lot of shift left is designed that way. It's like, that's not it. That's not what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Doesn't work. All right. Well, we should wrap up here. Have another fantastic week, and we'll see you next week here at the Cloud Pod.
Great. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net, for sign-up instructions.